Hello, Anna.
Hi there.
Where are you from and what brought you to Italy? Tell me about it.
Okay, so I was actually born in Finland. I've got some dual nationality, my English and Finnish. My mother was a refugee from Karelia, and most people don't know where Karelia is or was. Anyway, it was Finland and then it became Russia because it was invaded by Stalin at a certain point, which wasn't much fun for the locals. So she then was a refugee in Finland and she met my British father. So as you can tell by my perfect British accent, I went to school in the UK as a child, and then as an early teen, I would say I went to school there. And what brought me to Italy? Now, I've lived in quite a few places. I came here to study art, as lots of people do, you know.
Specifically to Tuscany, to Florence?
No, I actually studied art in Bologna, and then I stayed in Italy. Now, it's really strange, actually, because I've always had this kind of very mixed feelings about Italy, love and hatred at the same time. You know, quite strong emotions towards Italy. Now, I believe in reincarnation.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
And I really feel actually as if that one of the reasons that I came to Italy was because I had unfinished business here. My first memories of Italy, actually, I went to a church in Bologna. I didn't have a religious upbringing, you know, I wasn't raised as a Christian. So my father was an atheist and my mother was more of I would describe her as a pagan witch from Finland. You know, she used to go and stand in the garden barefoot and talk to the spirits and the birds and the insects and everything. So that was my kind of religious upbringing. And the very first time I think that I went into a church, I was in Bologna, and the only thing I knew about the Catholic religion was that priests were celibate. I think that's all I knew, actually. That was it, full stop.
Okay.
So I'll never forget it. I went into this church, and I don't know if you've ever seen some of the gruesome paintings that they have in Catholic churches. You know, there is these really gruesome
Absolutely,
paintings.
there's some in Orvieto in Duomo.
So anyway, I walked into this beautiful church. You know, Italian churches are beautiful. It was all inundated with light and there was incense and everything. And then I looked at this painting. There was this huge painting of a saint. And it was quite creepy, actually, because she looked like me. You know, of course, you know, at the time I was young and beautiful, had beautiful long blonde hair. And there was this painting of this saint with this beautiful long blonde hair. Her breasts had been cut off. So in the painting, obviously, there was blood pouring out of them. And if I remember rightly, her eyes had also been gouged out. So then there was all this blood all over her face. And I was looking in horror at this apparition. And then a young priest came up to me to say hello, presumably. So I was looking at this thing, this painting, and then I looked at him. He was young, very handsome, actually. And he started talking to me. And I noticed very shortly after that it was quite visible, even though he was wearing this long, whatever they're called, you know, those frocks.
Frock, yeah, let's call it a frock.
That he was aroused. So he was sweating and he was obviously aroused. I could see it. So I was looking at him and looking at this vision of this painting, you know, with all of the blood. And that was my introduction to the Catholic faith. It was very disturbing, I must say. It was incredibly disturbing. I love history. I love, love, love history. So I'm not an academic at all. I'm not nearly everything I do is self-taught. And, you know, I've lived in various parts of Italy. And I think one of the things that really, really struck me about all of the places I've lived in Italy, actually, ranging from, you know, Lazio to Umbria, Tuscany, Emilia-Romagna, and, you know, I've traveled all over Italy, is the sadness of women. Obviously not all women, but, you know, there's this kind of deep, deep sadness that permeates female society in Italy.
Do you think that's still like that, do you think? Or was this when you first arrived?
I think it's, unfortunately, I talk to women all of the time because of my work, because of all of the work this I do. I come into contact with women all of the time. I've really concentrated a lot of my life actually to working with women. And unfortunately, I think that there is still this underlying sadness and sense of frustration and unfairness. I think it's still there.
Do you think that's because of the Catholic religion?
Well, now that I really have studied, and, obviously not the official narrative, I'm not interested at all in the official narrative. And I really, really have studied. I've been to the state archives. Those are really juicy places. Have you ever been there?
No, but I often look at old texts on archive.org because a lot of books and things, they're scanned.
Going into one of those places. I mean, obviously, they don't give you the original of a book from 1,000 years ago, but, you can go into those libraries and open them up and start reading all of the stuff. I mean, obviously, a lot of this sadness and sense of frustration that kind of permeates female Italian society, obviously, it comes from the church and from the Inquisition and from the witch hunts.
And even notwithstanding that sort of sadness that you could feel, you still decided to stay here.
I had unfinished business.
That was your unfinished business. Okay.
Yeah, it's difficult to explain, but it's this feeling. I had to stay here, and it's really, really interesting because when I really had a lot of time to do research was during the pandemic.
Right.
That was great because you live here, so you know what it was like.
Yeah,
we were left
absolutely
completely penniless for 2 years.
Exactly.
Without money. Yoo-hoo!
Unless you had a decent work contract, which are few and far between, as we know.
Or a state job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I thought, wow, I might as well do what I enjoy doing. I'll start studying again. And I came up with this book here. The Divine
which is the reason I got in touch with you, because, I live in the Castello Romano. We have Lake Nemi near us, which has the temple to Diana.
Yeah.
And so this really is Artemis is Diana. That's her herb. So I was really attracted to this book. And then I saw you'd written other books as well, which were just as interesting, which unfortunately I haven't read yet, but I will definitely. You are on a mission, basically, now in Italy. You have a mission?
I think so. I mean, I wouldn't say it's really conscious, but when I first moved here, this aspect about the women, it really struck something really deep in my heart. Because obviously, I want to love everyone. I want to love men and women and children and insects and flowers and trees. I think that would be the best possible way for any human being to live. And, the fact that I've always seen so many downtrodden women and, you could really see their potential, so much potential I saw, which was just being wasted.
Yeah, there's still a lot of masculism, you think, here, even in jobs, the workplace.
I think that there is, but I think that even the men are suffering because of this. Because obviously, if everybody could realize their full potential, everyone would be happier, including the men. I don't think it's just so much that, the men decide consciously that the women have got to be downtrodden. It's all historical. And now I really have studied.
Just let me ask you, why did you choose to stay in Florence?
Oh, that's funny, actually. I chose to stay in Florence. I'm very happy, actually, in Florence. I love Florence. I chose to stay in Florence initially because I've got 2 grown-up children and they both moved here. We were living in Lucca before. And that's quite funny because now my daughter's moved to Bhutan. So I'm going to go and see her quite soon. My son's still here, though. So, that was the initial pull to Florence. But I'm very, very glad that I came here Because Florence actually is one of the few places in Italy, I think, where women have a much better chance here. You know, I'm really pleased now. I've got this fantastic publisher here. I can thrive here. You know, I can do all of the things that I do. I can thrive here.
Why do you say that you think Florence women have a better chance? Is there something particular that makes you say that?
Again, I think it's because of history. Because women here have historically they've been fighters. They've got a lot of character here. And I mean, you know, it's been difficult for them as well. Because if you go to the Uffizi Gallery, it's just shocking. You know how many paintings there are by women in the whole Uffizi Gallery?
A handful, I would think. Artemisia Gentileschi, maybe. Can't really think of any others.
One
One
painting in the whole of the Uffizi Gallery.
And who is it by?
Artemisia.
Yeah, Gentileschi.
And you know, it's a painting of a woman who's cutting off a man's head with a sword.
Oh yes, I know that one. Yeah, I know.
You know, one painting in the whole of the Uffizi Gallery. But you know, notwithstanding this, women still do have a better chance in Florence than they do in many other parts of Italy. I mean, I know some extraordinary women in Florence. There are lots of really expert herbalists in Florence.
And are they Florentine?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
I would say most of them are Florentine. There are women here who do fabulous perfume because, you know, Florence is really
famous
for the perfumes, for the scents and everything. But, you know, I know some very talented women in Florence who, you know, do all kinds of things actually. Writing as well or singing or whatever, and they do have a slightly better chance here than women in lots of other parts of Italy.
So if you were to choose again, you would make the same decision, you would even recommend it maybe to other people? Is it the sort of place that you would say it's definitely the type of a city where you can thrive, or is it, I presume it's got its difficulties like everywhere else?
Well, there's a big problem now in Florence because since, you know, the pandemic, and I know that this is happening in a lot of places in the world. But unfortunately, Florence is being completely taken over by Airbnb. So I don't know what's going to happen here. But if they don't do something, there's going to be a big problem because even if you do want to come here, now you need a lot of money, I think, to come and live here because it's very difficult to find an apartment to rent.
There's a bit of an uproar in Venice as well for the same reason. I think they're trying to put a stop to it. I think a lot of cities now, all over the world, because they're in the same situation. I think even Airbnb are changing things themselves. They want to revert back to their original business model where they were having people rent out rooms rather than whole houses.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. No, I mean, something has got to happen. Would you like to meet my Japanese students?
Yeah, okay.
Tomo, come and introduce yourself.
Ciao, Tomo.
Well, no, he's my student, but also now he's my husband's business partner. Come
nice to meet you. Come and
say hello to everybody.
Hi.
Hello. My name is Tomo. I'm taking many times, often from her to how to say English.
Tincture.
Artemisia.
Oh,
he's a convert.
Right. He's a convert. Okay, great. Nice to meet you.
You see, even for Japanese people.
Yeah, converted them.
No, I mean, if you've got talents here, if you've got ideas, I think it's a good place. I'm not so sure what, you know, if you're coming here looking for a job and you've got to find an apartment.
How do you get on with the Florentines?
Very, very well. Yeah, I mean, people often say, oh, they're so closed and they're so... I don't find that at all. I've got so many Florentine friends.
You found your place, which is what everybody needs to find, isn't it? And different people thrive in different surroundings and different places. So
of course.
What could be better? So let's just talk a bit briefly about the first book I saw, The Welcome to the Tuscan Dream, because of course, it makes me think of Francis May's Under the Tuscan Sun,
God,
you know.
no. Well,
actually, the cliche,
actually, you know, I think that's one of the reasons that I wrote this book, because here we are, here's the cover. I think this is quite kind of explanatory about how I felt. No, I mean, when I first moved to Tuscany, we lived in a place called Bagni di Lucca. This was 30 years ago. So we moved here, and I had 2 small kids, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I was so miserable. It rained all of the time for a start, and we lived in this place, you know, up in the mountains, in the hills. But you know, the feeling was really mutual. And oh God, it was awful.
How long ago was that?
30 years ago.
Okay.
Oh God, it was miserable. I mean, I think it's probably changed somewhat now, because, you know, I'm sure that it's becoming more international, you know, but when we lived among those hostile tribes, I mean, I had to get really, really strong to be able to live there. I used to walk around with a stick, you know.
Oh my
with
goodness.
A big stick.
Because you were afraid they would physically...
well, no, they did actually. They tried to physically attack me on various occasions, not just me, other foreigners who lived there. Again, you know, that was a very important experience in my life, because it was all kind of coming up to this, to what I've discovered now, because I'd only been living there for about, I would say, about a month or 2, and collectively they all decided that I was a witch. And I thought, wow, I mean, this is a bit weird. I mean, why would they think I was a witch? And I understand now because I've studied, but it just for the simple reason, because in that place where I lived, I mean, the women there were really badly off. It was just miserable as hell. And, you know, they all used to work in these really underpaid jobs, but a lot of their husbands treated them really badly, and their life was just a misery. And I think that they decided that I was a witch just because I wasn't willing to put up with any of that kind of crap. And, you know, I used to go foraging in the forest, because I've always liked foraging. Do you like foraging?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. I mean, foraging is quite a normal activity,
but free food.
But for them, you know, foraging or speaking your mind, or even walking around with your shoulders up. Oh, no, she's a witch.
Were you already married then?
Yeah.
And you married an Italian?
Yeah.
Okay. So did that facilitate you in any way?
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. Not at all. No. I was just this evil she-witch. You know, but that was actually quite educational. And it made me extremely strong, because, you know, if you've lived like I did in this environment, which is completely hostile, totally hostile towards you. Actually, it was really handy, because I remember, for example, when I used to, you know, as you do, you have to go to the town hall every now and to do documents.
Yeah.
Well, you can do them online now, theoretically, with a SPID. But back then you needed documents from the town hall. And, you know, well, as soon as I realized that, you know, that they all thought that I was a witch, that I had these supernatural powers, so I thought I'd put it to good use. And, you know, I remember I used to go and get my documents from the town hall, and I say, listen, I want this document within 2 days, or else.
So that was Bagni di Lucca, and then you moved to Florence.
No, then I spent a period, kind of intermediate period, in Lucca, and then I moved to Florence. But, you know, now that we're talking about it, my whole life, I think, has been permeated with this desire to see women flourish more. People in general, it's a subject I really care about. And I got a lot of young friends, you know, young female friends. And it's really nice, actually, because a lot of them come to me for advice. They come and talk to me. I think that's really good and proper, because at my age,
you know, I think it should be, you know, us elders, inverted commas, passing down our wisdom.
Yeah.
helping young generations not make the same mistakes, maybe.
Yeah.
So this all led up to you investigating a certain herb.
Would you like to hear what I discovered?
Yes, I do. I would like to hear what you discovered.
Yeah, well, what happened was, I'll show you the cover again. Oh, and by the way, the cover, I don't know if you can see it here. You see this painting here?
Yeah.
I painted this when I lived in Bagni di Lucca 30 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Because I really like these figures of, not the ones with their eyes gouged out and blood all over them, but the saints and the Madonnas.
Yes,
I painted
icons.
this, and then I found the painting, the photo of the painting, and look what she's got in her hand. She's carrying Artemisia in her hand and the book. And this was, 30 years before I found out about it. So I'd like to say that I've always been interested in herbs. I mean, really, I don't go to the doctor at all. I make all of my medicine in the kitchen here. I've never really used doctors. I wouldn't even know what to talk about with a doctor because I think I'm just better at being a doctor than they are. I mean, especially for my children, unless obviously you break a leg or something. So I've always been interested in herbal medicine. I love plants. And then the pandemic hit us in 2020. So, I was stuck in my apartment in Florence and my daughter was stuck in Laos. She travels a lot. For the first couple of months, I was a little bit worried about the virus, right at the early stages. And as I said, my daughter was stuck in Laos, which is right next door to China. So I was a little bit worried about, oh my God, just imagine, she gets sick in Laos and this, that, and the other. And then I spoke to a doctor from Laos and he didn't seem particularly worried. And he said, no, don't worry. We've already got the cure. So I said, really? That's interesting. What is it?
Yeah, let me know.
That's the first time ever I heard the name Artemisia annua. I said, oh yeah, it works really well. And then just a few days passed and I heard about Artemisia annua for the second time. And I discovered that they were using it in many parts of Africa, Madagascar as well. They also really believed in Artemisia annua as a cure for COVID. And Artemisia annua is a herb which originates from Hunan in China, but it grows in Italy as well. It grows in various places. So then, the first thing I wanted to do was to buy some. So I went to the herbalist and I said, yes, I want 100 grams of Artemisia annua, please. And then I went around all of the herbalists in Florence. It's banned in Italy.
Literally banned?
The herbal medicine is banned. Yeah, it's banned in Italy, France and Belgium. They really don't like Artemisia annua herbal tea at all. So I thought, banned? Why is it banned? And, that's when all of my research started. So I went on the government websites and everything. Yes, okay, it's banned. And then I found out the EU as well, they're really not enthusiastic about Artemisia annua tea at all. And then I started researching. And in the meanwhile, I was really proud of myself because me and my husband, we went searching in the fields and we found the Artemisia plants. So I foiled them and their evil plans. And I brought it back home. Look.
Is it easy to recognize?
No, it took me some time, actually. Within a few months, found out where it was growing. I found out how to make the medicine. I found out how to make the tea, and I found out how to make the tincture. And in the meanwhile, I kept on studying and studying and studying.
You're going to show us. Show me.
Here's some of my Artemisia.
Because I could understand Artemisia absentia being banned, but not Artemisia annua. Why?
Here it is.
That's it. And it's got a lovely smell.
No, my personal opinion now, after having studied for almost 3 years, my personal opinion is that the real reason why Artemisia annua is banned in Western countries, not in Africa, not in Asia, not in America, for example, it's not banned in America, is that it's so potent. It's antibacterial, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, anti-tumor, and anti-parasite. So, it's kind of this large spectrum, very potent medication, which costs next to nothing.
Which would make me think it would be banned in America as well.
Yeah, well,
Big
that's quite
Pharma,
strange, actually, because it's not banned in America, and it's not banned in Switzerland either.
Okay.
And in fact, in Switzerland and in America, there are large plantations of artemisia annua, and they've invested a lot of money into artemisia research. And funnily enough, the Vatican sells artemisia annua medicine, but you know, they're extraterritorial. But if you think about it, they don't. So the laws don't apply to them. And anyway, you know, I was really glad that I had the medicine, and I got COVID, Toma got COVID, Nicola got COVID, my husband, because it took me a long time actually, because once I made the medicine, I wanted to try it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get COVID, and I kept on trying to get COVID, and I couldn't. Eventually, I finally caught it from these two people who were really embarrassed. You know, they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, we came to see you without a mask, and we've got COVID now, and feel so embarrassed." And I said, "No, no, no, no. Thank you. Thank you for giving me COVID. So at long last, I can try out my medicine," which I did. And it's true. You know, it works really well for COVID because of all of the properties it's got. My son got COVID really, really bad, and I gave him the medicine and he recovered in a few days' time. It works really well. Apart from COVID, my mind just kept on going. I said, why is it banned? Why is it banned? When did this all start? So I started studying and studying and studying and studying. And, you know, I'm lucky because I can read in 4 languages, in English, Italian, French, and Spanish, and also I can understand quite a lot of Latin. So I went to the state archives, and then I did a lot of research online, and I bought a lot of books. I kept on opening up all of these Chinese boxes, and I went back all the way back to the Renaissance, and I discovered that actually before the Renaissance, artemisia had been brought to Europe from the ancient Egyptians, knew about it, the Babylonians, the ancient Greeks, and the knowledge had been brought over to Europe. And in the old days, everybody knew about artemisia, and it was mostly the women herbalists who were using artemisia. In the UK, for example, they all knew about artemisia.
It also cures women's problems, menstruation.
Exactly. It's fantastic for women's problems. For example, they used to give artemisia tea to women during birth because it helps
with the contractions.
It helps with the contractions, makes it less painful, and also it speeds, you know, it gives you a speedier and easier birth, and then for all kinds of women's problems. And, you know, there were temples to Artemisia all over the world.
That's why I was attracted to when I saw the link to your book, because being in Nemi, we all know about Diana. Artemis is her other name, of course. So she's the goddess of fertility. That's obviously where it gets its name from Diana.
Yeah, you know, that's what it was like until the Renaissance. In many parts of Europe, you knew where a herbalist lived because they used to put branches of artemisia hanging above their front door, or wreaths of artemisia. For example, you know, there was this very, very famous herbalist who was, you know, lived about 1,000 years ago, Hildegard of Bingen. And she said 1,000 years ago, she said, as we all know, artemisia is the principal remedy for all ailments. And this was 1,000 years ago.
Isn't she the one that also had a secret language? That So she knew, you know, that some things she needed to keep to herself as well.
So, you know, all of this knowledge about herbs, the herbal medicine, was really widespread. And then, unfortunately for women and unfortunately for the world, these two German men, Springer, and what was the other one's name? Heinrich Kramer and Joseph Springer, they published this book called the Malleus Maleficarum. Here you are.
Yeah.
the Malleus Maleficarum, which has just recently been translated into other languages.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. Oh God, it's awful. I mean, these men, they were just obviously completely raving
When does it
mad.
date from, this book?
I think it was 1470 something. Let's see now if I've got the date here.
Okay, yeah. So witch hunts.
It was 1470
Yeah.
something. I can't remember the exact date now. I've got it written down in my book. Anyway, these completely mad lunatics. I mean, it's the only they were both Dominican friars. I mean,
Okay.
the only thing I could have to say about them is they were just obviously completely insane. One of the pearls in this book, and you know, we can read it now because it's been translated into Italian and into English, but unfortunately for women and for the world, it was all in Latin, and it was a bestseller all over Europe for about 400 years. And when Christopher Columbus went to the New World, he went to America, unfortunately, you know, they were taking copies of this rubbish with them. So this is really nice about women. It says, for example, one of the pearls in this book says, all women are evil, full stop.
Really?
Yeah, all women are evil, full stop.
Yeah, talk about womb envy.
Yeah. And then it says, however, the most evil among them are the midwives and the herbalists.
Mm.
And then it goes on to spout this absolute rubbish. You know, the first part of the book talks about why there are so many witches in the world and why they're so evil and, you know, how many of them there are and what they get up to and everything. And the second part, oh God, there are some really awful bits. I mean, it could actually seem quite funny, you know, if you read it nowadays, because, for example, in the second part of the book, it tells all of the priests, because this was basically for priests, but, you know, notaries used to read it as well and town officials. It said that women, the witches, they could remove men's penises and testicles just by looking at them and uttering a magic word. They used to remove their testicles and their penises and put them in chests or in baskets and put them on trees. And the penises would remain alive. So the witches used to feed them.
Oh, gosh.
And then if men wanted to get their private parts back, they had to go to the witch and pay them. I mean, this is the kind of rubbish that's in this book. And then there's the third part. You know, it's basically, it was written just to terrify everybody, I think.
Yeah.
It could have been really scary stuff for about 500 years ago. And then the last bit is about how to do the witch trials and how to kill the witches. I mean, if you ended up at the Holy Inquisition, you didn't have much of a chance, really.
No, of course not. They would torture you until you confessed.
And anyway, it was all in Latin.
Yeah.
She didn't understand. This is when all of the problems started with the herbalists and with Artemisia. It really started with this book because these couple of men and you know, friends of theirs, they also made lists of so-called witches' herbs.
Okay, so they outlawed Artemisia.
Yeah.
It was so important.
Yeah, and other herbs as well.
Mm.
So then, you know, this rubbish and all of the witch hunts and everything, you know, that lasted for 400 years. So when this ended, because the last witch, I think, was burnt in Switzerland, I think it was. The witch hunts were really successful in England as well, and in Scotland, everywhere. So when they burnt the last witch, that was the end of that kind of stuff. And then we had this new period in history, science, and, you know, knowledge, all of this stuff. But it didn't really end there. I won't go into this too much because I really studied the beginning of modern medicine, John D. Rockefeller and all of the big corporations. And they just basically continued the work of their predecessors.
You would think with science they would want to prove that there are things like that, though, that can help people to cure their ailments. It baffles me.
It should have been like that. Unfortunately, things have taken a really bad turn. To come to our present days, Artemisia
a panacea, they would say.
I
Cures everything.
would say that. I would say that, yeah. On the back of this book I've written, The Mother Herb, an ancient conspiracy, which it is, a potent cure, the return of the goddess. And I'm really, really pleased because this book is doing incredibly well. You know what's very interesting is that I get emails from doctors, from male doctors, from scientists, from pharmacists. Obviously, lots of women write to me because I think it's very important for us women to
know our own bodies and what we can do with them and to cure anything.
We've got to learn how to make the medicine again.
I think I'm going to plant some artemisia.
Well done! You'll become a convert as well.
I might even make some absinthe as well. Just to get down to a little bit of nitty-gritty. Your main occupation is being a writer, is that right?
Since I've written this book, it is becoming pretty a full-time occupation, because I wasn't expecting it to have such a huge impact. But now I get emails, messages practically every day. More and more people are reading it all over the world. This month I'm going to Sicily. I'm going to go and do a book presentation in Milazzo and another one in Palermo.
And deep south, where men are still a bit patriarchs.
Well, it's funny you should say that because the first place I ever went to do a little conference about Artemisia was in Catania in Sicily. And actually, people were incredibly enthusiastic about what I discovered because Sicily, it's the deep south patriarchy and everything, but the women actually in Sicily are very strong, I find.
Italy is quite a contradictory country because even though they're very Catholic, a lot of, for tradition, and so there still is a big number of Catholics, they actually believe in woo-woo down in the south. They do the Fʟᴏᴇ, the little drop of oil in the water to get rid of any bad vibes that you're living through.
Oh, well, I noticed in Sicily that my stories about Artemisia, they go down very well in Sicily. In fact, I sent some seeds to Sicily and a lot of people have planted Artemisia now and they're experimenting with it. And then after Sicily, I've been invited to Copenhagen. I've been invited to America, to the island of Crete, because my book is on sale on the island of Crete as well with this fantastic herbalist. So it is kind of overtaking my life now. I also make jewelry though. This is it's a goddess.
That's nice. So you're a silversmith, goldsmith.
Yeah, silversmith and a goldsmith as well. Yeah.
Well, then of course you're in Florence. It's the jeweler's paradise.
Yeah. It's another place which is very good for jewelry. Yeah, so this is becoming a full-time occupation now. I'm a warrior for Artemisia.
Well, I wish you all the best. So thanks for enlightening me, and I can't wait to get on the train and read your book now.
Good. It's on sale online.
Oh yeah, we'll put a link in the description.
Everywhere, or Amazon. And then if you live in America, New Zealand, Australia, it's not on Amazon, but you can get it on Abe Books.
Okay, well, I'll make sure you give me all the links because we don't want anybody to miss it because I'm sure it's going to spark a lot of interest and women power.
Yeah, that's what I think. Women power. So that everybody's happier, including the men and the kids and the animals and everything.
Of course, everyone.